This is AJ Wachtel. Welcome to my podcast, Wachtelligence, where I discuss with my guests the past, present, and future of the local and national music scene with a focus on Boston and New England. Today's episode, Willie Alexander, the premier punk pioneer, is about the incredible life and career of a singer, songwriter, and keyboardist who is well known as one of the most talented and influential members of the life-altering first wave of punk music that came to Boston in the early to mid 1970s. In the beginning, there was the Lost, then the Bagatelle, then Grass Menagerie, then a short stint with the Velvet Underground, then the Boom Boom Band, with a lot of other groups making music over the past 2 decades too. And Willie is still an active participant on the music scene today. I can't wait to hear what this cool cat and legendary Loco has to say. Welcome to Wachtelligence, Willie.
Hey, glad to be here. Glad to be anywhere.
Listen, let's talk first about you were born in Philadelphia and you were raised in Gloucester.
Well, I was born in Philly. I don't remember Philly. My dad's first church was there. Then we moved to Medfield, Massachusetts, which is next to Walpole. And that's the first place I really remember. And from Medfield, we moved to Gloucester in 1950. And then we left Gloucester in 55, going on 56. I was going on 13. And we moved to East Providence, Rhode Island. And that's where I got into all the music. Actually, I heard 2 rock and roll songs here in Gloucester. The first rock and roll songs I ever heard were Ain't That a Shame by Fats Domino and Tutti Frutti by Little Richard. And it just blew me away. It was the shot heard around the world. It changed everything. I mean, I knew some music, but I mean, people were turning me on to like Duke Ellington and Fats Waller and guys like that. But
right.
Rock and roll was a brand new thing. And man, I just couldn't wait to get home from school and turn the radio on. It was amazing.
And your father was a minister, a Baptist minister too. What was that like?
Well, you know, he never put the music down. In fact, there's one great memory of us coming back from Cape Cod, driving in the car, the 3 kids and mom and dad, and Chuck Berry's School Days, or not School Days, no, Roll Over Beethoven came on the radio. He turned up the radio and started beating on the steering wheel in time. And he was digging it. I said, holy shit. So this is fine. And that was a happy moment. But they never put that, you know, I used to bang on the piano. It was next to the television and bandstand was on. And I tried to play along with that. I had no idea about keys and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I just was making a racket.
Well, you used to sneak into his church and play the piano there too.
Because there was a million like little upright pianos, and I'd go in there and you know, I'm trying to play a whole lot of shaking and stuff, man. Just, you know, though that was it for me and Jack, man. We just had to do it, you know. And Fats Domino and Little Richard. I mean, this is the gold. This is the template for my whole life. I didn't know it at the time, you know. I mean, my early idols were like Johnny Ray and Frankie Lane and guys like that. You know, Johnny Ray, he was like pre-rock and roll. He was really something. He was deep.
Well, you're something of a crooner today.
Well, I'm not a crooner. I don't know what my voice is. There's crooners here. One of them is Frank Rowe. He's a crooner. You know, but I don't think I'm a crooner.
Well, you started playing in coffee houses. Which ones did you start playing in?
The Unicorn. I played in the Unicorn, and actually I played some drums in the 47 Club when it was on Mount Auburn Street.
The Chinese drum.
No, I played regular drums. I was, Tony Williams was late one day. So the guy said, hey, Bill, I was Bill, you play drums? I said, yeah, man. So I sat in for Tony, man. And then Tony said, you want to, you know, sit in later? I could. But Tony and I were just high school boys, you know.
Well, you also played the Chinese drum like a conga, didn't you?
Yeah. That was, I couldn't carry it around. I still have that drum, you know.
And you also got into Afro-Cuban music and jazz. Who were you into in those days? Who'd you listen to?
Mongo Santa Maria, all of his early Cuban stuff, and Cal Tjader.
Right.
And as far as jazz goes, I loved Errol Garner and Thelonious Monk. Those, you know, my favorite piano players. I love those guys.
Well, you
And
were just talking about, that you used to play drums. You play jazz drums too.
yeah, yeah, it was all kinds of, I could play rock and roll too, but it was jazz drums that started me. I got my first set of drums from some guy I met at a party. I got them for $75, and they were crappy, but they were good.
What's the difference between jazz drums and rock and roll drums?
Well, a lot of rock and roll drummers don't even know how to roll, and they don't need to.
Yeah.
Jazz is just more is just a bigger vocabulary and different rhythms.
Well, let's talk about your early influences on piano. Who did you listen to when you were first playing piano?
Well, Errol Garner and Thelonious Monk, those are the big guys. And Duke Ellington, all, the greats. It's a Fats Waller, his stride piano, and he could play boogie woogie too.
What about Little Richard and Jerry Lee?
Are you kidding me? That was how you did it. I still look to them as the masters. This how they got from one end of the keyboard to the other.
Right.
And it's like it almost didn't matter what you did in between sometimes, as long as you landed in the right place. And that was a big lesson.
Right. Well, you first started your band, The Lost, circa 1964, and you became one of Boston's popular Bosstown psychedelic and garage rock and roll bands. Tell me about that.
Well, they came up with all those names later. It's like they try to categorize you. Most of our repertoire in the early days was out of folk and blues. We did Mose Allison and guys like that. And Ted Myers, he was writing a lot of songs. I just started writing songs back then, but it was kind of folk oriented, but heavy rhythm.
Right. Well, then I know that you and Barry Tashian from Barry and the Remains, the band that opened up for the Beatles on the 1966 tour, the local band, he helped you get signed to a major label, Capitol Records. What's the story with that?
He produced I don't know if you call it a demo, but about five or six song thing, and that's what we used to get our deal. But it was Barry that did that.
How'd you meet Barry?
We living on Beacon Hill, and we were like one street over from Don Law. Barry and Briggs, they were hanging out with Don Law.
Right.
And we just sort of met at a party, and he brought us down to the to the Rat for the first time. Said, "You guys got to play here." And Lord knows, I've been playing the Rat since it was there until it left.
Yeah. Did you know his first his favorite Beatle was George?
Yes, I know why too.
All right, let's talk about the Bagatelle. What happened to the Lost? How did you guys split up then? And why was the Bagatelle a different band?
Well, Lee, the drummer, he left the Lost. We actually had a subgroup within the Lost called the Bagatelle. Walter had a phrase, a mere bagatelle, which is like, I don't know, a mere trifle or something, but we did an instrumental thing, which was loosely based on Olé by John Coltrane. And it was like, our version of jazz, sort of, and it was just bass drums and piano, no vocals really. And then we played a thing. It was probably 10 minutes long sometimes, but it was totally different from everything else. It ended up on one of the Arf CDs that Eric Lehman put out.
And then you got into the Grass Menagerie. The same questions. What happened to the Bagatelle, and how was this band different?
I left the Bagatelle and the Grass Menagerie. Let me see. I was in the Grass Menagerie, and then I think I got drafted into the Bagatelle. I was a drummer. I left the Blast, and I decided I was going to be a drummer again for a while. And so I was a drummer in the Grass Menagerie. And the only problem with that band was like people could keep leaving, and then we have to keep teaching guys new parts, which was like, so many people came and went through that band. It was like one of these bands that practiced and never played. We played Montreal, the Expo 67 and stuff. He did some good gigs.
Well, didn't Doug Yule, he left that band and he joined Velvet Underground, and
Right.
he got you into the Velvet
Then
Underground.
he got Walter in first,
Okay.
and they got me in after Sterling left.
Right. And, you know, for you people out there, Velvet Underground was known for their integration of rock and roll and the avant-garde.
Didn't really know. I didn't really know the Velvet Underground's music when I was drafted into that band. And in fact, I still don't know most of the songs that I played on.
Well, you know,
and it was like pulling teeth trying to get chord changes out of Doug Yule for any of this stuff. So it was like I was just making up my own stuff. I was just making noise, and I was, and I was bombed out of my head, man. I was like, I was drinking and smoking whatever I could get when we were in Europe, which was hash, because we couldn't get any other, and we couldn't get any whiskey either half the time. It was like, what the hell? What's wrong with this country?
hey,
and anyway, I did about 3 or 4 of my own songs in the so-called Velvet Underground repertoire at that point. So that was cool. And I played drums behind Mo when she sang After Hours or whatever the song was. So it was fun, but it was like a blur.
Doug replaced John Cale, and you said you replaced Sterling Morrison. Sterling left to go back to school or something, didn't he?
Yes, that's right.
Were you friends with Lou Reed?
No, I met him once on Boylston Street when they were playing there. I think it was that place, was psychedelic. I don't know what, it was down about 8 floors below the ground.
Right.
And Doug was in the band then, and I guess Maureen was staying home because she was having a kid. So it's like, okay, here's Lou. I shook his hand, and that was about it. I don't remember anything else about the night. Yeah.
The way I heard it, after Velvet Underground toured England, Scotland, and the Netherlands in support of your album Loaded, the plan was on going back into the studio and recording music for your next album, but your manager had other ideas. Fact or fiction?
That's true. He sent all of us home, kept my piano, sent Walter and Mo and myself home, and kept Doug over there. And I think they drafted a guy from Deep Purple to play drums. I'm glad I wasn't on that album, because it's like, I don't think I ever got through listening to it once. I mean, all the tapes that I was from the Velvet Underground shows, people would send them to me back then. And I would listen to them once and just toss them. It's like, oh my God, this is horrible. But then the whole kit and caboodle came out in the early 90s. And it's like, wow, with all these color pictures and this like amazing packaging. And there's that music. Some of it sounds okay, but it's like, I was in between finding my own true voice at that point. But I was getting there. My biggest influence, singing-wise, I think at that point in my life, was Otis Redding.
All right, let's talk about the Boom Boom Band. Great band.
That's a great band.
Songs like Kerouac and Mass Ave were hits. Tell me a little bit about each song.
Well, I wrote that Kerouac song and Mass Ave, I think it was 1972 when I actually wrote them. But I didn't record Kerouac and Mass Ave until 75. We did it in Bill Ricca in somebody's living room. But it was like next to Lowell, so it was very significant. Right. Billy was in the studio, but it was Steve
Cataldo
and
from the Nervous Eaters.
Yeah, and Jeff Wilkinson on drums, also Nervous. I met those guys actually at Sandy's when I was playing a solo gig at Sandy's in Beverly. That's where I met the Rhythm A's, and boy, that was a fortuitous or whatever. So I was a rhythm asshole for a while, which I'm quite proud of.
Kerouac was your spiritual mentor at the time. Is he still?
Yeah. I still read him now and again. They're publishing his bibs from when he was a kid now. If he drooled on it, they're going to put it out. And they kind of, it's kind of a strange trip now, but I mean, I picked up the original scroll finally got published, so I had to pick that one up. But yeah, I still listen to him now and then and read him now and then. I mean, he was great. And he was writing about here, but, you know, Massachusetts. And to me, it was a pretty positive thing.
You snuck up pretty fast, snuck out of the past. Oh, Kerouac, you're on the top of my shelf. Kerouac, out there with nobody else.
And so I had all these songs when I finally, you know, this Battle of the Bands thing came around, and
Right.
Bruce Minor, the Fox Pass, he was their manager, and he's saying, "Willie, you sleaze bucket," you know, it's like, you know, singing with about 4 or 5 bands. I'm singing on both sides. I'd sing 2 songs with one band and cross town and sing 2 songs with another band.
Right.
And so he said, "Come on, man, you can get your own band together, or whatever." and so I did, and I borrowed. Billy had this band with Billy Cole called Wild Honey or something like that. I don't remember what it was now. So I borrowed them. I said, "Well, you know, let's learn a set," and we did. And so I heard those tapes, man. I said, "Holy shit, this is fucking
This is great. Yeah.
Yeah." So we were rehearsing in the Ready Teddy basement at Ready Teddy Manor, and wherever it was in Brookline somewhere. They had this big mansion there that they were renting for to everybody. So that's how we were paying it. But they were living like rock stars in this place, and it was like it was great. Everybody crashed there. Swine was the man, you know. He really produced my first 2 singles, and those 2 singles are the hottest things we probably ever recorded.
Your song Mass Ave that I mentioned, that's a rocking declaration of independence of Boston's growing punk revolution. It's a great song to this day.
Butterfly on your right shoulder, honey, how could you be bolder on Mass Ave? With your ass up on the bar, kissing strangers by the hour, real elite star, yeah. Oh, in the bars all night, in the morning, such a fright on Mass Ave. Yeah. Whoa.
That 45, man, that was cooking. That was, you know, it was totally different from what we did later with MCA Records. But
well, you know, I want to talk about Billy. You brought up Billy Alexander. I used to write about him in his growling guitar. This guy is a great guitarist.
He's a fantastic guitarist.
And you just said how you met, you know, but what do you think's great about his guitar work?
Every time he plays, it's a different solo. I don't know if you can remember what he did the night before. Probably not. You know, I mean, we used to tape some of our rehearsals when we got together again, you know, like in the 2000s. And he wouldn't listen to those tapes. You know, the rest of us would come attached. But it's like everything he played was good. So it's like you couldn't complain really ever. So it's like, you know, he was just wonderful.
Well, I just spoke to Billy.
You know, I listened to those records. It's like, you know, fucking hey, Jesus.
I just spoke to Billy, and he gave me a few stories to bring up to you. And he goes, just like you said, Willie, said a lot of funny stories I have, but I bet you Willie won't remember some of them.
That's right.
And I laughed. It is the time when the president of MCA came to see you guys at the Whiskey A Go-Go, and you forgot your fish.
Yes.
And wouldn't go on until it was retrieved from your room at the Tropicana, and
right.
Luckily it was just around the corner. What's the story about that?
Well, I had this fish that I was wearing around my belt, and I would, you know, swing that around while I was performing, and I had left it at, you know, had to do interviews and stuff, and had to do a lot of things some days. So I left all this stuff back at the Tropicana, and I needed the fish as part, and so this guy's going, what kind of fish does he want? I'll get him any kind of fish. You know, any kind of fish he wants. What's it? You know, he had no idea I'm talking about this little rubber shark that I've been hanging from my belt. You know, but you know, I had to stand my ground. Yeah.
Hey, in 1976, when Live at the Rat, Jimmy Harold's album came out, your song "At the Rat's" on it. What's the story about that song, and what's the song about?
So I think I was writing it, and I was going to give it to Mickey Clean and the Mez. They never used it, so I used it, and boy, oh boy, that's the, you know, that song's probably my most famous song, along with Kerouac and Mass Avenue. But yeah, people say I stole it from at the Hop, but of course I didn't. Of course I did.
Yeah, here I am again. Been standing here since 1965. The stage wasn't here when it was over there. We're down in Kinpole Square, so we're standing there with the rat. She took off my hat and sat down on my lap at the rat. She was my BU baby, and I don't mean baby at the rat.
Hey, your nickname is Loco.
Yeah.
How'd you get that name, Willie?
Well, there's two Afro-Cuban musicians. I combined Willie Bobo, who was a timbale player, and Joe Loco, a pianist. And so I put them together. So I was Willie Loco, and it worked fine because the guys I was hanging around with had nicknames like Macondo and things like that, and I couldn't get away with that. So it's like, okay, I'll be Willie Loco. You know, that was.
Do people still call you Loco?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even called Willie until I started playing with the Lost. I was always just Bill Alexander, you know? And then I came up with that name, and it served me well when punk rock came along. I already had a fake name.
You know, there's a Willie Alexander.
You can do anything with a name like Loco. You can, you know, it's okay. It just opened up the whole musical world. I could play anything because I'm Loco. I could do anything, you know.
Right.
Good.
Well, you know, speaking, we were talking a little bit before about France. You're real popular in France, and I know that your longtime soulmate, Anne Rierick, is a great, great photographer, and she's had a bunch of exhibits there. Is that how you first got over into France?
No, actually, you know Joe Viglione?
Yeah.
He had a deal with Patrick Mattei, who had New Rose Records. He had another label first, and he put out an album of Joe. So he's talking with Joe one day, and he says, "What's Willie doing?" Because they knew about me because of my 45s. And he said, "Well, he's working on a solo album. They left the Boom Booms." And so Patrick told Joe, he said, "Well, tell him I'll put it out when he finishes it." And that was it. That's how I got my French deal. It was just a phone, and bam, there it was.
You've had a lot of albums out in France.
Yeah, he put out a lot of albums. Of course, every album that came out, he would always, you know, I would ask him how it was going a couple of months later or whatever. And he says, "Really, it's a masterpiece, but unfortunately, it only sold a few thousand copies." He would say that every time. It's a masterpiece, but unfortunately, it only, you know, it's like, and trying to get mechanical royalties or anything like that out of these guys was like pulling teeth. Rick Hart had helped me. But it's like, I didn't even know I was supposed to get them until I was on the road with Dramarama over there. And they were talking about getting royalties. And what the hell are these guys talking about? So I wasn't getting any of those mechanical royalties. You know, I never got anything like that from Capitol Records or ABC Records or, you know, it was ridiculous. Ridiculous. I don't even know what I'm leading up to here.
Well, in 1991, another great French story. In 1991, you toured there 3 times, and you once told me a great story about meeting a fan there. Can you please tell me that?
Yeah, that's 1982 on our first
82,
tour.
okay.
And we played this festival in a place called Bourges. And after that gig, this kid came over to me and he says, come with me to my, and my Patrick, the record company, says, this guy wants to talk to you. And so he brought me to his car and he put this cassette in, and it's him and his band playing At the Rat. And they were doing it with, it sounded like me singing. He was copped my style. They got the key changed, went into the key of G from A flat for the solos and then back. It's like, you guys, it was amazing.
How cool is that?
That was the coolest. And it was like, wow, this is the rock and roll night, man.
Willie, you're still smiling ear to ear telling that story.
Well, it was like, holy shit. I couldn't believe it. You know, it's like you learn somebody, and when you get covered, it's like lately, I have a song called Gin, and two bands have covered it. There's a band called Luna, they covered it, and a duo, an electronic duo from Saskatchewan called The Waitress. They covered Gin, and Gin is a song I put out like in 1980 or something like that. It's like, holy crap. That's really,
so cool.
And Kerouac got covered too by a guy named Tim Presley. So it's like, wow. It's like they're catching up with me, but boy, it's like 20 or 30 years later.
Okay. You have a solo career too. We've talked about that. I want to talk a little bit about you and Preacher Jack.
Yeah.
That was, Preacher Jack. I spoke to Peter Levine, his manager, in my second episode of Wachtelligence. How did this come about?
Well, there's a drummer here in town named Dave Doc Vincent. And he played with Preacher Jack for 3 or 4 years, like during his rounder period, I think. And he brought me to Salem to this place. I forget the name of it, but I'd been hearing about Preacher Jack. People tried to bring me to him years ago, go to the Blue something or other. And we went to the Blue something or other, and he wasn't there that night. So it's like, but I saw Preacher Jack and he just blew me away. I said, man, you got the left hand of God, which we really appreciated. His left hand with his afterbeat is like, I gotta jack his whack and give him my waggle, so we're trading riffs back and forth here. It's like, but we both had he was a year older than me, but we both we saw Jerry Lee on TV and Little Richard said, man, we got to do this. And he made me practice. When I was doing gigs with him, I made sure that I wasn't playing in his key, or I wanted to be totally different from him.
Can you give me a funny Willie Alexander Preacher Jack story?
Jeez. Well, he never stopped talking no matter what. We'd be playing the piano and he's jabbering away in my ear always. And he called me Alexander the Great, which I really loved when I started playing some of this Fats Domino stuff, because he loved Fats Domino too. I mean, we just, we were just like long lost brothers in the rock and roll night. I would tell him, Jack, I'm so glad I didn't run into you when I started out, because I'd be playing the banjo now. He loved that.
I have a funny Willie Alexander story you told me a long time ago. When you were inducted into the Boston Music Hall of Fame in 1987, you said you were nervous. And you said, I'm not used to getting awards. I'm used to playing the piano and singing. Yeah. And I've known you for almost 40 years. You're not nervous now, are you?
Oh, yeah. It's almost involuntary. I mean, when I have a gig, it's just weird. I'm all nervous. I can't sleep very well. I'm nauseous. I'm this and that. It's like once I start playing them, I'm fine, and I do it. But it's like it's involuntary. It's just. I mean, I've been doing this for 100 years, so it's like it should be second nature, and it is in a way. But it's like I just. The easy part is playing. The hard part is before you play, thinking about, is people going to show up? Are my hands going to work? My voice sounds like crap these days. What's going to happen?
Am I going to get paid?
Yeah, am I going to get paid? Is there money involved? Yeah, that happens too. I mean, everybody wants music free these days. It's like just trying to get people to buy product is like pulling teeth. It seems, unless it's just, well, maybe I'm just not middle of the road enough or something. But every now and then I connect with something that I've written. So it's, you know, you just got to keep writing them. You never know. There's a hand.
Willie, can you play a little song for me? Can you play a little bit?
Just piano, because I don't have a mic set.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
Thank you, Willie, for the private concert. That was great. Listen, all right. What are some of the greatest shows that you've performed at?
I can't remember. It's always the next one, man.
What about your current projects? What are you up to now?
Well, I just started working on some new things with Tony Goddess on a Bang-A-Song, which is on Main Street, underneath Main Street in Gloucester, and it's a great studio. And I don't know, it's like, I listened to some of it when it started. It's like, it sounds like the newsreel. It sounds like, I mean, the stuff that I'm using for the way I put stuff together in the studio now is like a puzzle. I mean, I got some rhythm 45s from a second-hand shop in Idaho, and it's like, okay, jazz beats, waltz beats, cowboy beats, and so we slowed these down and we sped them up and we isolated parts and we just threw them into this thing, and I had part of a loop and this and that, and it's just crazy, but it's like, okay, and I have some lyrics. Mostly it's like post-dada, post-MoMA, post-modern, post-human, post-truth, post-couth. And it's just a thing that keeps going in it sometimes. I mean, I might put some regular stuff in there, but I doubt it.
Well, how do you see the scene recovering post-pandemic now?
It seems like all of a sudden it's like somebody snapped their fingers and said it was over, but now they're snapping their fingers and it's like, it's not really over. You still got to worry. So it's like, it's kind of weird. I mean, it was so strange for the first time in my life not to be able to play. You know, not that I played every week of my life anyway, but I looked at it like, I felt like I was retired. I was back to being Bill Alexander before my so-called rock and roll career, and I became Willie Alexander, and I was painting, and that's what I'm keeping myself. And listening to music, of course. But yeah, it's like slow. Coming back is just weird. It's just learning my repertoire again. It's like I got to learn my tune, so at least I can try and get some of the lyrics right. Not that it matters anymore, because you can always make new stuff up.
Well, do you have any advice for any of the young people that are trying to make it in this tough time right now?
Well, I met James Brown once, and they told him, hey, this guy just got a deal with MCA Records. You know, do you have any advice for him? And he said, just be yourself, Willie. So that's my advice to anybody that's going to just, be yourself and stand up for yourself and just, try and do it your way as much as you can. And you'll be happier than, I mean, it's like getting a record deal isn't the end of the world anymore, as people know.
Right.
But it's like, I haven't really mastered selling product through my confuser yet, but who knows? I mean, I'm shocked right now that people are buying paintings of mine, which is a nice surprise, but
Well, tell me about your painting.
It's like I'm not thinking while I'm doing it anymore. I did mostly collages for the last 20 years, but I started painting again, and it's all fresh to me. It's like It's like colors are like the notes, and I'm just letting the notes play with. It's like I'm going into. I don't know what I'm doing. It's just like going into the studio and I'm making stuff up and seeing what works, and it seems to be working.
How is it different? You preparing to paint, and you preparing to write a song.
It all comes from the same place, I think. There's a creative spring in people, or from. I don't know where the songs come from, except when I trip over them on the street and write down something. Otherwise it's like automatic writing from the sky. It's like exquisite corpse. It's like, I don't have one set formula ever.
What are your favorite songs that you've written?
Almost, well, the ones, I think my ace moment from the 70s is from the Rat album, and it's a pop tune, which was puked up Poochie Panty tune, which was called Pop Tune on my greatest hits in France. But that one, because it's like, I know there was a beginning and end to the song, but in between it was all made up. And it was just 3 chords, E flat, A flat, B flat. That's all you need forever. E flat, if I was to write a book, it would be called E flat's been very good to me. Although, D's been very good to me too. It's like trying to make a set list and it's like, geez, Willie, half these songs start with D. That was during the boom boom days. Now a lot of them start with E flat. I don't know why.
You've matured.
I've matured, yeah. It's like I want to play in the big boy keys. Well, it's like if you want to play a Ray Charles song, I do Lonely Avenue, and I said, well, it's easy for me to play this in G, but it don't sound the same. It's got to be in his key. You got to do it. You got to do it right.
So, Willie, what do you think your legacy should be?
He made a good meatloaf.
Is that fact or fiction?
I worked in group homes for 20 years, and that was one of my star moments. I'd sneak raisins and things into the meatloaf.
You were also a painter for a long time.
House painter. Yeah, I did that. I did a lot of things. And dishwasher. Dishwashing was always my go-to job because you could always get a dishwashing gig. That was part of my French legend, that I was this guy washing dishes on Mass Avenue, writing these great songs, That's the way it goes. Look, Little Richard was a dishwasher. Charlie Parker washed dishes. So it's like, that's good company.
Good company. What was the first concert you ever attended? I always end my podcast with this question, Willie.
Well, my mother was a great musician. She could play the violin and sing and play the piano. And she used to play in local civic symphonies. So going to these local civic symphonies, like in Medfield, Massachusetts and Gloucester, Massachusetts, and hearing like Rhapsody in Blue and stuff like that. And that was, orchestral music, like whatever you want to call that kind of stuff. But then on my own, when we moved to Newton and stuff, and I could take the bus into town, I started to go and, to coffee houses to hear jazz. But my first like legit concert, I went to Symphony Hall and I saw Errol Garner, and he's probably my first one. And that was thrilling. I saw him twice. I saw Roy Orbison in Symphony Hall too, which was also awesome. But my first one was Errol Garner, I believe. But I saw a lot of greats when I was in high school. I saw, Duke Ellington and Thelonious Monk and all these guys. It's like, holy shit, man. They don't make them like that anymore. They really don't.
If people come and see you today, what part of them do they see in your performance?
Well, I've seen a little bit of all of it. I mean, I still even do stuff I did with the Lost every now and then. I used to do some Bo Diddley songs and some Chuck Berry songs with the Lost. And I love doing that stuff. It's, I love it. And so they can, what kills me is like if I go to upper state New York and somebody will come to a show and say, I saw you guys when you first blew through here in 1966. Then I saw you here in 1976 with the Boom Booms, or the 77, and here you are again. Holy crap. So I'm just happy when they talk about the Lost, because you don't know what kind of a impact you're having while you're doing it, really. It's like later somebody you can kind of hear about it. And that's what it's always makes me feel good, to get recognized for something that we've done that we never thought we touched with anybody. But
And Willie, you're 78 years young, still with a lot to say. Thank you so much for being on Wachtelligence. Willie, I humbly say, you're the greatest.
Thanks, man. My pleasure. I'm doing this forever.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Wachtelligence. You can connect with me on Facebook at Wachtelligence. Thanks to my producers, my son Harrison and David Schwartz, and Harvey Brooks for my theme song. Don't forget to subscribe.
I don't care what you think of me. Don't need no jailer to set me free. Don't want strangers filling up my cup. Don't need no advisor to show me down from up.